Hello and welcome to Unscripted. I'm Kabatagwai. Our featured guest for today's program is Alastair Crooke. Alastair Crooke is a former British diplomat and is the founder and the director of the Beirut-based Conflicts Forum. It's an organization that advocates for engagement between Islam and the West. Now, amongst his other career highlights, he was a former advisor on West Asia issues to Javier Solana, the former EU foreign policy chief. He also has extensive experience with resistance movements like Hamas and Hezbollah. And he also accurately predicted that Israel would use aggression against Iran before it actually happened.
And the question is, Iran, are you going to do this, or are you going to accede to the Israeli firsters in America and to Israel and to Ron Dermer and Netanyahu, who are preparing even now for the attack on Iran? And so you ask me, is it going to happen? Very probably yes. I think as things stand, Trump hasn't got a great deal to show in the terms of successes. And there is one fundamental failure and flaw. Like Russia, they believe that, well, even more than Russia, they believe that Iran is an easy war, because Iran is weak, that they can go in, bomb and kill, not destroy the nuclear weapons, not destroy the oil facilities, but decapitate Iranian leadership. And with Iran decapitated, then it would turn out to be like Syria.
Alastair Crooke, welcome to Unscripted.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure to be with you.
It's our pleasure. Actually, we had the pleasure of having you on May 21st here in the capital, Tehran. You recall, I interviewed you, and back then you said that there was going to be what you said, quote, Israel's preparing for an attack, even now. This was in the context of the indirect negotiations that the U.S. and the Islamic Republic were having at the time, of which you didn't sound very optimistic. Tell us what made you think that that was going to happen, which it eventually did.
I think the signs were all present, that that Israel was preparing and was pushing very hard. One could see the signs in the White House, in the links that they had with the CIA director, and before that with Waltz, that they were pushing very hard to try and pull the United States into conflict, a full-scale conflict with Iran. And part of the story that they were peddling was the story of Syria, that Iran was so on the brink of collapse, on the brink of being like Syria, and that it was going to be an easy war because after their attack, their sneak attack on the 13th of June, which obviously Trump was fully aware of, this sneak attack would bring about a paralysis in Iran. The decapitation would leave Iran confused. I mean, I didn't know or didn't predict the 13th of June surprise attack on Iran, but it's entirely consistent with the whole process of first of all, presuming that what was the objective, American objectives, ultimate objectives, is in fact a regime change. Not only, or if not regime change, the destruction of the whole of Iran into, if you like, different groups, different ethnicities, all at war, rather like we see Syria is today or Libya was in the past, to make it chaotic, weak, unstable, and that was really the purpose. The talks were a blind. They were just a blind. They weren't serious about it, and I think I saw then that they were not serious because, when they asked for zero enrichment, and that they said also we want to bring the ballistic missile program into the talks too. I mean, this didn't seem to me a serious proposal, because it was inconceivable that Iran would either agree to zero enrichment.
Okay.
After all, and then it was very clear that what was on the table was a complete destabilization of Iran, not talks.
Would it be then wrong to say that perhaps that's not what the type of retaliation they got was not what they expected. I mean, you said, again, back to that interview I had with you, that you said they thought Iran would be an easy war. They can go and bomb, not to kill civilians, but to kill Iranian leadership, that it would turn into Syria, just like you just said now, and that they would just walk in. But based on the type of retaliation, didn't that mess up their plans?
Completely, utterly. It's changed the calculus altogether, because as I indicated, they thought that the 13th of June would break the spine of Iran. Instead of which, it's ignited Shia identity and Iranian national identity, and has created a huge fervor amongst not just all Iranians, but particularly about young people who maybe some years earlier were sort of disaffected, have come back, and and amongst I think surprising for the West, amongst everything, was their love for the supreme leader. They expressed their support for the supreme leader. So this has changed, in a sense, everything, because rather than dealing with a broken state, they find they're dealing with a state that has rebounded quicker than anyone imagined it was possible. After the decapitations and the assassinations, new commanders were appointed, the war continued and inflicted huge cost on Israel, until ultimately it was Israel that, as they say in English, called uncle. I surrendered and said to the Qataris, to the Omanis, they said very quickly, for goodness sake, we need a ceasefire. We need to stop this war.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that a little bit in terms of that. I'm trying to figure out the mindset, as I'm sure Iranian officials are, of the U.S. president, which is, he's somewhat schizophrenic in the way that he's acted. But this is what Trump said. He said in one of his, Q&As, Israel got hit really hard, especially the last couple of days. Those ballistic missiles, they took out a lot of buildings. Actually, it was 30,809 buildings to be exact, is what I came up with. And then he said, we'll end up having somewhat of a relationship with Iran. I see it. Look, I've had a relationship with Iran over the last 4 days, and we ended up in a ceasefire. It's really interesting that he said that. 4 days out of the 12 days, he said that he was having a relationship with Iran. What do you think of that? Do you think he's sincere in what he said there? And what does it actually mean?
I don't think it means very much, but I think what it does mean is that he didn't want to be pulled at this stage into an all-out war with Iran. So we had the attack on the 22nd on the 3 nuclear sites. And it's still not clear to me exactly what he was thinking. It's a good point you raise, because the Israelis had told the Americans that there were blast bans on all the entrances into Fordo, that there were blast bans, which meant that using these bunker buster bombs would not succeed in penetrating the enrichment hall. But the actual attack was calculated on the vents, the air vents, being vertical, and that they could just feed one after the other of GBU-57 bombs, and they would go down and there'd be a huge explosion in the centrifuge hall. Now, was that true? Would it be likely? This is a big debate in America as well. People are saying, come on, the Iranians are very intelligent people. They're not going to put blast bans on every entrance into it and not do it on the main vent and have a vertical vent passageway going down from the surface straight into their most sensitive floor, 800 meters below level. And so the question everyone is really asking, was Trump misbriefed, and the fact that the whole thing rested on the assumption of a vertical shaft into Fordo, or did he just play it out and decide, look, I'm just going to say it, I know it's not true, but I'm just going to say everything was obliterated, 100%. There's no more nuclear program. I'm closing down the argument, and we're going to have a ceasefire because of the pressures that were coming internally in this respect. And of course, he knows that what he's doing by that process is walking himself into a trap, which means that there will be another round of conflict between Israel and America, because the Israelis will not accept his judgment that there's no more nuclear programs. They know probably the enriched uranium was taken anyway out of the centers, out of Fordo, some days before, and there'll be no problem in restarting
you've had
the program.
some, according to even the Israeli side, the Israeli regime side, that there have been Israeli, I guess, analysis done on this that says that the facilities did actually have a lot of damage incurred on them in terms of it being set back. Then comes the projections and speculations by years or even longer, and of course the cost that's involved. But I'm trying to understand what led to that ceasefire. I'm trying to understand what happened there, because when
it's nothing about the realities that you've just described. Everyone understands that it's quite probable that Iran took, if you like, the enriched uranium out of and put it somewhere else. In another position. Everyone understands that it can be restarted, and Fordo probably wasn't destroyed, and Isfahan almost certainly wasn't. And what is happening is the management of politics, not the description of reality.
Tell us the management of politics when it came to the ceasefire. You have you had the foreign minister, Araghchi, went to Russia. The day after, you had what happened with Al Udeid Air Base. Qatar, obviously, well, that's the biggest American air base in Qatar. Obviously, Qatar must have received something to allow for another country, Iran, and its ballistic missiles to land there. Okay, and then you have the U.S. President Donald Trump saying they had it out, they got it out of their system. There's a ceasefire, and the tone changed when it came to Iran. What happened there?
Yeah.
What give and take was there?
It was politics. What he was trying to do was, I mean, how Trump manages politics is not by irrational statements. It is by reality TV. You have to have already seen reality TV to understand it. But, you know, it's what he says reality is that is what matters, not what the truth is. It's what he says, and that he believes by his personality, he can dominate and impose that view. So, you know, what he said to the Omanis was once and done. Okay, you know, we're going to bomb these sites and then it's over. And then we want the ceasefire. I think, first of all, he understood, because many people in the US understood that if it continued, it could actually go very much wrong for the United States, because it could be a defeat of Israel. And that would be a huge defeat for the United States. So he was at that point trying to manage this process through declarative statements that were completely unconnected with reality. It's his role, and then, you know, you quickly move to another topic, and that's where it is. Look, no one's talking about what's happening in Los Angeles or Elon Musk these days. It was this, and then he'll move it to another topic. The whole thing is to bulldoze the topics through quickly so that no one has too long to think about it. But my point is here, it will become apparent that, you know, the nuclear program hasn't been set back for years. And so the Israeli pressure will continue, and the right-wing pressure will continue on him.
If that's going to continue,
I don't think he wants to do this now.
If that's going to continue, aren't they going to take into consideration what many analysts have said, even within Israel? I'm reading one summary which said what sets the latest footage apart, based on the destruction in Haifa, is the level of apparent precision in Iran's targeting. Retaliation appears to have leveraged more accurate strike technologies, that this updated variants of the Khorramshahr class ballistic missiles that was equipped with advanced guidance systems, just some of the destruction that caused, that it struck command centers, surveillance outposts, civilian neighborhoods, and that has raised concerns within Israeli, IOF circles about a breach in their previously assumed position, that it could actually, from a strategic standpoint, withstand this. Hasn't this altered the view from the Israeli regime side?
Well, it's created a sort of parallel condition. In the United States, you have the MAGA group, the populist group, the American election was centered on really two issues at a presidential level. One was immigration, the other was no more forever wars. And the populists are very angry that they seem to be pulling into another forever war in the Middle East. And this is really important in American politics, because what we can see from that is that much of the support that won him the election came from former Democrats who were attracted by the no forever war narratives and I'm a man of peace, not of war story. And so they brought into that. And at the same time in Israel, you have a division between the senior security officials and the ideologues, if you like, the Israeli ideologues, Barnea and others in Mossad, who are calling for another round of war. Between the security ideologues say, yes, this is opportune, this is the moment, we have to get the Americans fully involved in doing it. And the other side in Israel who are saying, but what's the end game? How do you see this ending? How are we going to get out of this war? Where is it going? What are our objectives? What are our strategies for this war? And they see none. So there is a big division in Israel, and there is a big division in the US, and I guess that's why Trump decided to sort of do this, completely obliterated, nothing standing, everything's gone, we don't even have to talk about it.
Do you agree with the fact that there's a camp out there, many actually, who say that the U.S. came and actually saved Israel when it announced that ceasefire, that it was, that they call it the hidden part of the story, that it was beyond their capacity in terms of what the Israeli aggression was, that they went to the point that they had no more strength, and that it was a terrible ordeal also for the Israelis. I mean, is that narrative something you buy or agree with?
Oh yes, I agree. The costs on Israel, economic costs, were huge, 12 billion in that 12 days period. But they were running out of intercept missiles. They were running out of the ability to stop, if you like, the missiles coming. It was, and the damage, I mean, they had a complete news blackout. So it's been very hard to get the extent of it. But now there's admissions, Channel 13 on Israeli channel, Hebrew channel, they're now admitting there was huge damage to the military structures of Israel. So yes, this is absolutely true. And you never know who the last person Trump listened to. Was it Ratcliffe? Was it David Barnea? Or Dermer, Ron Dermer, or was it someone like Vance and some of the others saying, listen, Israel can't survive this. I mean, it's not going to be a great triumph for you and for the Trump project. This could end up in a disaster for the United States.
Alastair Crooke, before the ink was dry on the paper, you have the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying that we can't miss one day in reference to Abraham Accords. I mean, you figure there would be other things on his mind, but it's almost like he's following some kind of playbook where that's what's next, that there needs to be, and the U.S. joined in, without a window for the ceasefire to even transpire. At this point, we're looking at a week to have gone by, but we're seeing movements to that effect. So do you think that, to them, that this is what's now should be played out, and that then maybe...
Absolutely. Witkoff said this precisely, and I think he reflects Trump's thinking. I remember in his interview with Tucker Carlson, he said very plainly, he said, look, the Abraham Accords, I mean, I'm very sure that we'll soon have Lebanon. It may seem unlikely, but they will normalize with Israel. And look, Syria, look, Sharar, I mean, he's an SOB, but he's our SOB. I think we can bring him into it too. And then the only problem is that in the north, in Iran, with their, all their proxies and their terrorist groups. But if that could be resolved in some way, it would be epic. The whole world would be normalized around Israel. And he said that absolutely plainly. And I think that's roughly the plan.
So moving forward right now, we're looking at again, it's hard to decipher the logic behind Trump's statements when it's inconsistent and goes against. But when he says, yeah, we're going to have talks with Iran, and then now he's saying the latest, I think that, but I'm not going to be part of it, but there are going to be talks. I mean, go figure what that really means. But there's one entity here that I'd like to discuss with you, because this has really put a stick in the wheel, and that's the IAEA. What are your thoughts about the Director General, the trove of information that Iran was able to pull out from the Israeli regime onto Iran points to many examples of how there was documents that revealed the cooperation of the IAEA Director General with the Israeli regime. What do you think about that fact and what is going to happen there? Because Iran has passed in Parliament not to cooperate with the IAEA, but we have to get a final confirmation of that. But obviously the Director General Grossi, Iran is not going to accept any longer.
Well, it was pretty clear that was set up because, the resolution came on the 12th, and then on the 13th was the sneak attack on Iran. So it was set up. How was it set up? It was set up because the IAEA uses an artificial intelligence system called Mosaic, which is from Palantir, who provides the same sort of AI targeting processes to Israel, to the 8200 process. And if you remember, Lavender was being used in Gaza to identify Hamas targets. It was set up originally as as an intelligence targeting and counter-terrorist system. For Iraq and Afghanistan, it was used and then transposed into the IAEA. And what the difference is, it looks at 40 million pieces of data to gain intent, to imply, to try and guess what people might be thinking but are not acting on, but which they could be thinking. And that's how it was used to target people in the intelligence world. What social platforms did you use? What groups of WhatsApp are your children in? All of these things could say Hamas or Hezbollah, assassination. And it was using that to say, oh, look, there's an intent of Iran to circumvent the process, and they're moving enriched uranium without telling us, and their intent is to accelerate towards a weapon. This is not the evidence. This is why you had, if you like, a contradiction with Tulsi Gabbard and the intelligence agencies, which were working on solid evidence. Yes, they said there is no evidence of a bomb and no evidence of a change in policy, but IAEA were manipulating this, if you like, artificial intelligence to give the, if you like, the pretext of a sudden acceleration in intent of Iran, unproven, implied intent. And that was persuasive to Trump and to some Israelis that was all that was needed to proceed with the attack on the 13th. And the Europeans and the board bought into it on the 12th and condemned Iran.
And that does it for this edition of Unscripted. You just heard from our featured guest, Alastair Crooke, which he believes that another Israeli aggression against Iran is a strong possibility. We do ask you to watch a repeat of the program. It is on our website. Once it gets loaded up, you can check it out. All the W's.presstv.ir. From me, Javier Solana, and the team here at Unscripted, it's goodbye.